Hey guys, I'm Jerry. I'm really pleased to release jcFeather 2.8, and in this lesson I will show you how to make a feather coat in jcFeather 2.8. And we have totally new tools to scatter feathers, and you can also use brush tool to sculpt feathers direction and size. So let's start. Okay, as you see in this scene, we have two guys. This mesh is a static mesh, and this one is an animated mesh. I will change the time slider. As you see, you can see that. Now I will select the static mesh and click jcScatter to create a scatter node. Now you have lots of points. Those points represent the relative position of the mesh and later we will use the points to scatter feathers on this mesh. And secondly, now select the static plane and create jcPregad. Now we have lots of guidelines. At the start of each guideline, we have a small point. And the direction of each guideline means the feather's direction. And now, of course, I need a feather template mesh. Click this button, create a standard jcFeather template mesh. Okay, now we have this guy. Now select the animated mesh, and I will bring this UI and select the mesh, create jcPreFeather. Now you have nothing, just a jcPreFeather node and a prefeather auto mesh, but this mesh is you have nothing. So first select the scatter node and update jcScatter, select jcPreFeather shape, select jcPregad and update the pregad. Now select the feather template mesh and update instance mesh. Okay, now we have lots of new feathers. First, I will select the jcPreFeather node, set the rotate offset to 15. You can also change the global scale and also the random scale. But if you want change the feather direction, you can do this. First, draw a curve on this static mesh. Select the curve and in pregad menu, update guide curves. Okay, now you see the jcPregad node. The guidelines change its direction, and all the guidelines follows the curve's direction. You can rotate the curve to change the direction. Okay, now the feather's direction also follows the curve's direction. Now you select jcScatter node. You can set the UV segment, the density, to 20 and 20. Oh, maybe it's a little bit bigger. I will change the global scale. And feathers do not scatter like this, just like a grid. So I will add some offset, maybe 0.1. 0.01. Okay, so far so good. Select jcFeather. You can also have some deform. Turn on this active band attribute. Just like this. And you can also change the band curvature attribute. So I will set this to 0 and change the attribute. You can also add some random band curvature like this. Okay, currently I will turn off this attribute, but this direction, this feather's direction, everyone, we don't like that. Now I will use new tools to sculpt the feather direction and size. Click this button and bring the jcFeather tools. It's really easy to paint feather direction and size with jcFeather. So just select the feather coat mesh and click those buttons. Those buttons means the attributes you can paint. First, I will click the yaw button and just brush as usually you use native Maya brush to paint something. As you see, it's really easy. I can add some new values. And I can also change this to negative values. You can also paint the pitch attribute, set to positive. You can also paint the size of the feathers. Click the uniform scale. Set the value to -1. And you can also just paint the length of the feather. Okay, as you see. Or the width of the feather. And if you want paint the bent attribute of the feather, you need turn on the active bend value attribute. Select the feather coat mesh, click the bend button, set to a little bit bigger. Okay. Now I will show you another method. Select GC scatter. I want to change this attribute to 10. I will get fewer feathers. If you want a feather at a specific position of this mesh, you can use user UV date, add new atom, change the UV value. As you can see, this feather will move on the mesh. You can add another one. So it's obviously in this method you really need a poly UV set. Select this mesh and I will bring the UV texture editor. As you can see, we have a UV set. If you do not have a UV set, you can change the scatter mode to area mode. Set this attribute to 2. In this mode, we will scatter points. Look at those points. We will scatter points on this mesh based on the poly area. But it's a little bit random. Usually, UV mode is preferred. As you know, feathers should be scattered on the mesh a little bit uniform. So, in next lesson, I will show you the imposition mode in jcFeather scatter node. And now I will show you something in the help menu of jcFeather. This is a jcFeather help document, and this graph shows how to make a feather coat in jcFeather. Look at this graph. We have a static mesh and an animated mesh. Static mesh means this mesh, and the animated mesh, it means this mesh. And in jcFeather, we need a jc scatter node to scatter points and the jcPreGAN node to create guidelines. And the jcPreFeather node will collect the position date, the guideline date to make a feather coat, to scatter feathers on this animated mesh. Of course, you need a feather instanced mesh, and you can use the user paint brush tool to sculpt the feather's direction and size. And finally, jcPreFeather make a feather coat mesh. This means this mesh. And in next lesson, I will show you jcPre controller to control the jcPreFeather node. So that's all in this lesson. See you. Bye for now.